I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Vice President Sara Duterte.
Pero no, I have no contradiction to the manifestation of the Honorable Chair, Congressman Akop. But I just want to inform this body of what the Easter bombing is all about. Because the Honorable Congressman Luistro mentioned about it.
I have a 19-second video of the interview of the former president about the Dumoy bombing. If this representation may be allowed to. I think this is 19 seconds, Mr. Chair.
Seconds, okay, please.
Secretariat, kindly play.
Before that, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of Vice President Sara Duterte. Secretariat, can you please play the video?
Hindi mo mapasa yan sa akin. But the order, sabihin mo yung order ng mayor, akin yan. That is different. Kung ano yung individual guilt doon, hindi po. Kung sabihin mo, overall, nakabulyaso yan, akin yan. At hindi ko, in many cases, mayor for almost 30 years, and even as president, when I ordered na tinuturo ko talaga sarili ko, akin yan, para magtrabaho ang mga tao.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the
Somebody
clarification.
has to take the blame, at the blame stops here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yet, Mr. Chair, I repeat my manifestation at the confusion between the statement that there will be full legal responsibility and at the same time guilt is personal. While there's the mentioning that he will take full responsibility in the cases of, for example, the Barayugas Ley, and of course, also of the killing of the 3 Chinese nationals. I would like to mention that in the case of the Davao Penal Colony, that according to our witnesses, your name was also utilized, Mr. President. Ang sabi po ni Colonel Garma, allegedly, if I believe right, is that huwag kayo mag-interfere, alam ng presidente ito. This is part of, alam mo naman yung pinaglalaban natin dito. So that is just some of the examples, Mr. President, which we have to decipher the difference now between your pangako po, your taking charge, full responsibility, versus what you're saying na guilt is personal. But nevertheless, Mr. President, we'll proceed with the rest of the line of questioning. Mr. President, you made a statement prior, and I think this was brought up by Congressman Abante, regarding yung sa helicopter po. And I think you affirmed this. You mentioned that if you are corrupt, I will fetch you using a helicopter to Manila and I will throw you out. I have done this before, why would I not do it again? And you mentioned, Mr. President, earlier that this is hyperbole. You said, istorya lang po. You stand by this, Mr. President, through the Honorable Chairman.
Patakot lang man yun.
Patakot. And at this time, this was at a formal event po, no? You made this statement while you were already president. Was that correct?
Yes.
Mr. President, earlier, Chairman Dan Fernandez had this question, and you affirmed that when you were mayor, you would go around in your motorcycle and you would be looking for trouble, literally looking for these criminals. And you mentioned that sometimes you would find them and you would kill them. Was that hyperbole, Mr. President?
Not necessarily. Yung enkwentro lang. Nakamotor ako, pagbababa ako, magparking ako, tapos lapitan ko sila. Yung iba magtakbo, yung iba hindi. Minsan, may makita ako na magbunot ng baril. Lumalaban. Hindi naman ako masyado praktisado sa barilan, pero alam ko na pag ganun ang sitwasyon, you're in danger of losing your life.
Mr. President, in these times na rumuronda po kayo naka-big bike and you've had these encounters, how many persons have you killed, Mr. President?
Wala akong accounting dyan.
With no hyperbole, Mr. President, would you know?
Wala talaga akong maybe 3/4, gano'n. Yung direct talaga na encuentro.
3/4 of what po, Mr. President?
Again?
You mentioned 3/4 or 3 or 4.
Hindi, ibig sabihin ko, iba-ibang situation.
But I mean, how many have you killed, Mr. President,
Yan
in
nga.
these situations?
3 or 4, something like that.
3 or 4 incidents. And in these 3 or 4 incidents, Mr. President, were they all caught in flagrante delicto?
Yeah,
Meaning they were in commission of the crime?
I would never kill an innocent. Hindi ako gago magbaril ng tao na ano. Sabi mo nakatali, yung extrajudicial killing niya, sabi mo na nakapusas tapos barilin. Hindi ka lalaki niya.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's not a job of... Huwag na lang yung sabihin nung tanggalin mo na lang yung mayor tapat yung pagkapulis mo. Hindi, that's not a job of... pagkalalaki ka, hindi mo gawin yan.
So, Mr. Chair, they were caught in flagrante delicto, meaning in the commission of the crime, at you would say na in all these cases, nanlaban po sila, yung 3 or 4. Bumunot po sila ng baril.
Yes. Sa Dumoy.
Mr. President, in these 3 or 4 cases of...
Ang problema lang yan is actually, anim ba yun ang namatay? 4 lang ang baril. So, ibig sabihin, hindi lahat nakahawak. But the problem is when there is shootout, ang bala naman hindi talaga namimili. So if you are concentrated on one space, tapos nagputok ka na, mabuti sana kung isang bagmang, kung armalighted, brrr.
So, Mr. President, you're saying in these instances of your vigilante nights na nakabike po kayo, minsan may collateral damage po?
Wala.
None.
Wala.
So, in these 3 or 4 cases that you mentioned na may pinatay po kayo na nanlaban, were cases filed against you for homicide?
Wala rin.
Isn't it the job of the prosecutor to, if pag may namatay, either homicide or murder, that they would file the case and you would prove your defense in court?
Si Pael, yung prosecutor, bakit niya ako na nga yung nanlaban, tapos ako pa i-prosecute mo?
So, Mr. President, in these instances where you have killed these 3 and 4 people and no cases were filed,
No. No
Did-
cases were filed.
would you recall the names of these persons that you have killed?
No. You know, why would I, why would? It's a silly question. Bakit ko alamin kung sino yung gagong na yan? Punerary ang bahala na sila establish ng identity.